Today, we're going to talk about the truth about autotune. If you think you know, you might be surprised by a few of these things I'm going to talk about today. Hi, I'm Becky. This is the Empowered Indie Artists YouTube channel and podcast. Please subscribe, please like, please share this video if you find it interesting or helpful, and I'd appreciate your comments. You can argue with me if you want. or agree with me or tell me your thoughts on this subject matter because it's very controversial, isn't it? Yeah. So let's get to it. The truth about autotune. The first truth, you may think that you're hearing autotune, but in fact, maybe it's not autotune that you hear. I didn't really realize this was an issue until this was a while back, maybe like 5 years ago. I was recording somebody and it was their first time recording in the studio. And before the session, she was like, I want it to sound, I don't want any auto tune. I don't want any processing. She really wanted it to sound as raw as possible. And so when we're recording and we start listening back to her recorded vocal, she was like, I don't want any auto tune. And I was like, there's no auto tune. And she was like, what? I had a little bit of reverb on her vocal when she heard it back and a little bit of compression, and that was it. But the thing is that as a singer, you're used to hearing your voice in your own head. If you have never heard it back recorded, it is going to sound totally different to you, for one, just because it's coming from outside of your body into your ears, which is a totally different experience. But also, the sound of compression, a little bit of reverb, is something that you don't hear in any natural environment unless you are walking into, a parking garage or the bathroom. You're going to hear some reverb, but again, it's doesn't have that polished compression. It's not going to have the same sound as when it's coming from your inside your head. It's going to sound different. So that's when I realized, wow, all the hate that people get, like, oh, she's using autotune. They may think that they're hearing autotune when in actuality, it's just there's layers and layers and layers of processing that create a modern vocal sound before or excluding autotune, all kinds of stuff. So, first of all, I would say train your ear if you are a singer songwriter and you're interested in pursuing a career as an independent artist. You've got to learn how to hear what that sounds like, what compression sounds like, what reverb sounds like, what there's a variety, I mean, like hundreds of thousands of different options for reverb. And reverb is short for reverberation. That is the sound of the space. And even though we're recording in a recording studio where you want it to be as dead as possible, we add a reverb or the sound of space into your vocal. And we can add as much or as little as you want. And the space can sound different. But that is just part of processing vocals and has been since the dawn of recording. As soon as they were able to figure out how to create false reverbs with using massive metal plates, they did. And now we use plugins in our computer that emulate these plates or spaces. Like you can click around in your reverb settings and find like a cathedral or a cave. I mean, there's just a gazillion options. So anyway, that's kind of a tangent. But the point is that as a singer-songwriter, educate your ear. Learn to hear what autotune sounds like. The second thing, our ears have become accustomed to hearing perfect recorded vocals. And it's even used live now. Now, not all singers, of course, not all singers use it. As a matter of fact, I did a little search to see who are the singers who don't use autotune. And while this article reads as if it was written by AI, I'm not 100% sure. Um, you can't really be surprised by this list. These are amazing singers, and you can kind of tell when you listen to them sing live versus in the studio that there's probably not that really tightly tuned flavor to their vocal, at least their lead vocal. Now, on backing vocals, I'd say it's fair game. There's probably tuning on backing vocals. And I find it ironic that Alicia Keys is on here. I love Alicia Keys. She's incredibly talented, but literally I cannot listen to her because she sings so flat. But kudos for her for not using auto tune. Ed Sheeran, Celine Dion, Jessie J. I have a hard time believing Jessie J doesn't use autotune because I'm pretty sure I hear it on her vocal. But this article kind of reads like, there really isn't any like verification. It's just maybe like what they've said, or it might be one particular song that they say, oh, I didn't use any autotune. So yeah, as I'm like reading this Jessie J, there's really like, oh, she doesn't use autotune. Well, we don't really have any verification of that. Um, Florence and the Machine, I mean, that's part of her sound is it's actually really saucy and kind of on the bottom of the pitch. So I can't even imagine her voice with autotune. It would just sound weird. Adele, I can hear her pitchiness in her recordings and I love it. I don't even know who Fauzia is, which don't hate at me because I don't know her. But anyway, John Legend, incredible vocalist. Yes, so there are definitely singers who don't use it. But in general, we as music consumers, as listeners of music, we have become accustomed to the sound of produced vocals that include this layer of tuning. And I'll tell you, a lot of the, like Justin Bieber, a lot of the processing that goes into that vocal production for a lot of the top tier artists actually have multiple layers. So they have Melodyne, which is a tuning program that we use where we can really get some nuance. We can actually use Melodyne to make tuning sound much more natural. That's what I use because I don't have any artists that are like, I want it to sound really tuned. Once in a while, like honestly, like rappers, they might have that. I need that really tuned sound for what we're looking for. And so I'll go ahead and just crank it, just hard tuning. But anyway, a lot of these top tier artists, they have the Melodyne processing, and then they pop on the auto tune plugin on top of it. So they have like layers of tuning, and it creates a certain sound that we as music listeners have come to sort of depend on. Not depend on, but like if we don't hear it cranked like that, if we don't hear that same level of processing, then we may not know why, but we perceive that vocal performance as being less than or not as commercial or not as professional. And subliminally, we don't even know why unless we're, people who work in studios all day long. The third thing, not just singers are using autotune or some type of tuning editing program. You don't believe me? Look at this. Melodyne for bass guitar and string tension issues, editing guitars with Melodyne. Melodyne, I saw one to fix drums. Melodyne for drums. Yes. Quantizing multi-track drums. Yes. All instruments can be tweaked to perfection. So it's not just singers that are using this software, okay? And again, it comes down to us as the listeners. We are expecting a certain quality of sound in our modern music. And we may think that it's not a highly processed song. We may think, oh, it's really raw and live and in the moment. And yet, all of this kind of editing went into every detail of the song: vocals, bass, guitar, drums, synths, whatever, strings. All of the instruments may have been edited to perfection. Sometimes you can use these editing tools to create imperfections or weird intonation issues. It's just another tool that we use in the studio. So calm down, people. In conclusion, the use of autotune editing techniques has become such an integral part of the fabric of modern production sound. It doesn't mean, oh, that's a bad singer trying to sing. Now, is Melodyne or autotune used to help bad singers sound good? Yes. But even the best of singers, I will use the same editing technique in order to get that really perfect polished sound. Now, I will go through like literally syllable by syllable and make the decisions about whether or not to tune because I want them to sound really natural in almost all cases. And there are many times when it's like, yep, that whole phrase has not been touched by anything editing at all. And it really just depends on the style of song, the production approach that you're taking, the sound that you want for the overall thing. So, anyway, autotune, Melodyne, that is just another tool that we use, just like compression, just like EQ. It is not necessary for all singers, but it has contributed to the overall sound. And I compare it to, imagine that you go to the beach one day and everyone is wearing a bodysuit that makes them look absolutely perfect. Skin is tight, no fat, and they have these perfect bodies. And you show up with your not perfect body. It's kind of hard to feel like you are confident in that space. So when we kind of shame singers for using autotune and editing techniques in the studio, we're holding them to a standard that maybe just isn't realistic. And it doesn't mean that they can't be one of those singers that doesn't use autotune, just like that list we used. But those singers are exceptional, for one, and had to kind of crawl to the ranks. And the other thing I notice is that none of them are like current, like making big waves right now. They all really got their big start at least probably 10 years ago. I mean, Ed Sheeran might be the most recent, and his big hits I think were like 10 years ago, or maybe even a little more than that. So, do we have any current artists that, oh, I guess no, Adam Lambert. Yeah, he's been around for a while, that are climbing up the ranks, like hitting the top of the charts right now that do not use autotune? I can't think of any. If you know of any, let me know in the comments. Thanks for being here, listening to me jabber on about autotune. I would love to hear your comments. Just for joining me today, I do have a freebie for you. It's the Releasing Music Checklist. Grab it today. If you're releasing music and you're just getting started, you might be overwhelmed with all of the things that you are supposed to do. And this is a checklist that will just walk you through. Do this, register here, make sure you've got this, make sure you've got that. So make sure you grab it, and I'll see you next time.